I trusted him with my house, my savings, and my name on a piece of paper. 22 years of friendship, and he sold all of it for $400,000. The strange part is not that he did it. The strange part is what happened to him after. Because 2 years later, the man who took everything from me was standing outside a courthouse with nothing left, asking me for a loan. This is the story of Danny Colton, the man I called my brother, and the deal he made behind my back that destroyed us both, though only one of us walked away with our names still worth something. Before we get into how it happened, you need to understand something. This was never supposed to be a story about betrayal. It was supposed to be a story about two kids from the same street who built something real. Here is what you need to know going in. Two best friends built a company from a garage with $3,000 and a used delivery van. Within a decade, that company was worth 8 figures. One of them signed away the other's share in a private deal nobody was supposed to find out about. The questions that drive this story are simple, but the answers are not. Why would a man betray the one person who never once let him down? What did he think he was going to get away with? And how does someone go from holding $400,000 in a private account to standing on a sidewalk with nothing? Stay with me, because the ending of this story is not the one you are expecting, and by the time we get there, you may find yourself questioning who the real victim was. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Mark Delaney and Danny Colton grew up 4 houses apart in a working-class neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. Their fathers worked the same shift at the same plant. Their mothers carpooled to the same church on Sundays. By the time they were 12, they were inseparable, riding bikes to the same creek, trading comic books, dreaming about the kind of life neither of their families had ever had. Danny was the talker. He could sell anyone anything. From lemonade to a broken bike he swore still worked fine. Mark was quieter, more careful, the one who checked the numbers twice before he believed them. People who knew them both used to joke that between the two of them, they made one complete businessman. After high school, while their friends scattered to different colleges or different cities, Mark and Danny stayed close. Mark studied business at a state school an hour away, coming home most weekends. Danny skipped college entirely, working construction and picking up side jobs, always talking about the day he would run his own company. In 2009, with the economy still reeling, the two of them pooled what savings they had, roughly $3,000 combined, and bought a used cargo van. They started a moving and hauling business, taking jobs nobody else wanted, working 16-hour days, sleeping in the van more nights than either of them liked to admit. What made their partnership work in those early years was trust. There was no contract between them for the first 3 years, just a handshake and a shared bank account. Mark handled the numbers, the scheduling, the slow, careful growth. Danny handled the clients, the charm, the relationships that turned one job into 5. By 2014, they had incorporated properly, split ownership 50-50 on paper, and expanded into commercial logistics, moving inventory for small businesses across 3 counties. By 2018, they had over 40 employees in contracts with regional retailers that neither of them could have imagined a decade earlier. Friends who watched them build it all said the same thing. They finished each other's sentences in meetings. They vacationed together with their families. Danny was the best man at Mark's wedding. Mark was the godfather to Danny's youngest daughter. On the surface, there was no reason to believe anything could come between them. But underneath that surface, something had started shifting, quietly, in a direction only one of them could see. By late 2019, the company had drawn interest from a larger regional logistics firm looking to acquire smaller operations like theirs. The number on the table was substantial, enough to change both of their lives permanently. And that is where things began to change between two men who had never had a real disagreement in over 20 years of friendship. The acquisition offer came in at just under $2 million for the full company, contingent on both partners agreeing to the sale and staying on for a transition period. Mark wanted to negotiate, believing the company was worth more given its growth trajectory. Danny wanted to take the deal immediately. Neither man saw this disagreement as anything more than ordinary business friction, the kind partners work through. What Mark did not know was that Danny had already been in private conversations with a representative from the acquiring firm for nearly 2 months before bringing the offer to the table. Records later obtained during litigation showed Danny had negotiated a separate side agreement, a consulting arrangement paid directly to him, worth $400,000, contingent on the sale closing at a lower valuation than the company was actually worth. In exchange for steering the deal through quickly and quietly, Danny would be compensated personally, outside the company's books, in a way that Mark would never see reflected in the sale price they both signed off on. To make this work, Danny needed Mark to agree to the lower valuation without realizing there was a better offer available. He began telling Mark that a competing logistics firm had shown interest, but pulled out, discouraging Mark from shopping the company to other buyers. He claimed cash flow was tightening and that waiting for a better deal carried real risk. Every conversation was calibrated to make the lower offer look like the safer, smarter choice, when in reality, 2 other firms had expressed serious interest at a significantly higher valuation. Mark, trusting the partner he had known since childhood, agreed to move forward. He signed away his half of a company he had spent a decade building, believing he was getting a fair outcome for both of them. He walked away from the closing table with just under $1 million, a substantial sum by any measure, but roughly $600,000 less than his actual share of the company's true value. Danny walked away with his half of the sale price, plus the $400,000 side payment nobody else knew about. For nearly a year, Mark had no idea anything had been wrong with the deal. He used his payout to start a smaller consulting practice, believing the story he had been told that the sale had simply come at a difficult market moment. It was only when a former employee, someone who had left the company shortly after the acquisition and later worked briefly for the same acquiring firm, mentioned an old internal email in passing conversation, that Mark began to suspect something did not add up. That single comment sent him looking for answers he was not prepared to find. Mark spent the next several months quietly gathering information, reluctant to believe what he was starting to piece together. He reached out to a former colleague at the acquiring firm, careful not to reveal why he was asking. What he learned confirmed his worst suspicion. There had, in fact, been 2 other offers on the table before the sale closed, both higher than what Mark and Danny had accepted, and both offers had been quietly declined, without Mark's knowledge or signature. He hired an attorney and began the process of requesting financial records tied to the sale, a process that took nearly 4 months and multiple legal filings before any documents were released. When they finally arrived, Mark found the consulting agreement buried in an appendix, $400,000, paid to Danny Colton personally, dated 6 weeks before the sale officially closed. The payment had been structured as a transition consulting fee, technically legal on its own, but never disclosed to Mark, despite the fact that it directly influenced the valuation he had agreed to. Mark did not go public right away. Those closest to him at the time described someone trying to process a betrayal that did not fit anywhere in his understanding of the world. He had been the best man at Danny's wedding. Danny had cried at his father's funeral standing beside him. For weeks, Mark says he kept looking for another explanation, something that would make sense of the numbers without meaning. His oldest friend had deliberately cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars for a personal payout. Eventually, Mark filed a civil suit, alleging breach of fiduciary duty and fraudulent concealment. The case became public within the small business community both men had grown up in. Old friends took sides. Some defended Danny, insisting there must be a simpler explanation. Others, especially those who had worked inside the company during the acquisition, quietly confirmed they had always found the timeline suspicious, though none had known the specifics. Danny's version of events, presented through his attorneys, was that the consulting fee was a legitimate, separate transaction unrelated to the valuation Mark had agreed to, and that Mark's claims were an attempt to extract additional money after willingly signing a legal sale agreement. Depositions dragged on for over a year. Emails, text messages, and internal communications were entered into evidence, many of them showing a pattern of Danny discouraging outside offers while privately negotiating his own arrangement. The turning point came during a deposition of the acquiring firm's former deal representative, the person Danny had been negotiating with directly. Under oath, the representative confirmed that Danny had proposed the side arrangement himself and had specifically requested that the payment be structured in a way that would not appear on any documents Mark would review before signing. The representative also confirmed that 2 higher offers had existed and had been withdrawn at Danny's request, without ever being presented to Mark. The jury found in Mark's favor on breach of fiduciary duty, awarding him damages that included the $600,000 valuation gap, along with a portion of the undisclosed consulting fee. Danny was ordered to pay just under $1 million combined. For a man who had built his identity around being the one who always came out ahead, the verdict was a public unraveling. Local business publications that had once profiled the two of them as a model partnership now covered the trial in detail. What almost nobody expected was what came next. Danny had already spent a significant portion of the $400,000 payout, along with much of his share from the original sale, on a second business venture that failed within 18 months. A boutique logistics startup that could not compete without the client relationships and reputation that had belonged to the original company he and Mark built together. Combined with mounting legal fees from defending the lawsuit, Danny was left owing far more than he had left to pay it with. 2 years after the sale that started it all, Danny Colton filed for personal bankruptcy. The house he had upgraded to after the acquisition was sold at a loss. His second business shut its doors permanently. The man who once could sell anyone on anything found that his name, once his greatest asset in that community, had become the reason former clients and old friends no longer wanted to work with him. He had traded a 22-year friendship and his own reputation for a payout that, in the end, he never truly got to keep. Mark, for his part, did not celebrate the outcome. Those who know him describe someone who still struggles to reconcile the version of Danny he grew up with against the version who quietly negotiated behind his back for months. In interviews given after the case concluded, Mark has said the money mattered less to him than the fact that he no longer knows which parts of their friendship were ever real and which were simply Danny managing him the way he managed a client. The most unexpected chapter came roughly a year after the bankruptcy filing, when Danny reached out to Mark directly, not through lawyers, asking for a personal loan to help stabilize his family's finances. Mark has never publicly confirmed what his answer was. What he has said is that the request forced him to sit with a question that has no clean answer: whether the people we build our lives alongside are ever fully knowable, or whether we simply choose, for as long as it is convenient, to believe they are. Was justice really served when both men ultimately lost something they can never get back? Would you have spotted the warning signs Mark missed, the discouraged offers, the sudden urgency, the friend who always seemed to have an answer ready before you had finished asking the question? That is for you to decide. What do you think really happened in those 2 months before the deal closed? Do you think Danny always planned to cut Mark out? Or did the opportunity simply present itself and he could not resist taking it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you thought this story was hard to watch, wait until you hear what happened when 2 sisters inherited their family's company, and only one of them was ever meant to know the will had been changed. Subscribe for more real-life stories of trust, betrayal, and the people left to pick up the pieces.